All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Everything College Football Podcast. Today I'll be doing my preview and prediction for Ohio State versus Penn State, a ranked Big Ten matchup going down in Week 9 here this Saturday. 15.5-point line in favor of the Buckeyes, over-under 61. 12 p.m. Eastern Time on Fox. Beaver Stadium and University Park is the location for this one. Looking at this Ohio State offense, they've been quite flawless this season, almost 50 points per game, well over 500 yards per contest. C.J. Stroud, 70% completion rate, north of 2,000 yards, 28 touchdowns. Does have 4 picks, but, top to bottom, Ohio State, this passing game has picked up right where it was a season ago, despite, a big shift at the pass-catching position, 289 yards per game for Stroud. He's right now the Heisman front runner. They've really eased Jackson Smith-Njigba back into this lineup here. Of course, he injured his hamstring Week 1 against Notre Dame, and he only has 5 receptions on the year. He's only played in 3 games, 2 grabs against the Irish, 2 against Toledo, and 1 here this past weekend against Iowa. They're just, taking it easy with him. No need to. They've been dynamite without him. It's without Emeka Egbuka and Marvin Harrison Jr., the chance to step up here. And you knew they were going to be big this year, but, it's been really a perfect storm. JSN gets hurt, and they haven't needed him one bit. It's allowed these younger guys to step up. So when he's fully healthy here towards the back half of this season in November, it's going to be really tough for these opponents. Egbuka, 41 grabs, 735 yards, 7 touchdowns. Marvin Harrison, a heck of a route runner, some great feet in the short area, a little under 600 yards on 38 grabs and 10 touchdowns for him. Julian Fleming, he's got 17 receptions, almost 20 yards per catch for him. Then Cade Stover, he has 18 receptions for 231 yards. And that's about it for the receiving core. They've only had a handful of guys getting involved, 4 or 5 options now. When Smith comes back, they'll be just fine at the wide receiver position. Stroud, plenty of weapons to work with, of course. Looking at the running game, they struggled big time against Iowa. It's a really good defense. They're on the field a lot, but the whole Ohio State only 66 yards rushing on 30 attempts. Very good stuff there from the Hawkeyes. Other than that, though, Ohio State, that ends a streak of 4 games in a row. They had 200-plus yards rushing. So, it was very odd to see what happened against Iowa. Mayan Williams, 516 yards and 9 touchdowns, 474 and 4 touchdowns for Travion Henderson. A phenomenal 1-2 punch. Dalton Hayden, the freshman, he's gotten involved a good bit this year as well, averaging about 9 carries a game. And I love to see this team run the ball a lot more. I think last year they only had 2 games of 40-plus attempts. Right now they have 3 of those games. So they're getting tremendous balance out of this offense, eating out the clock a little bit more, which is hard to do because they're so good at making big plays through the air. And you've seen that a lot this year. You've seen against Notre Dame, it was a big struggle for the most part. But against Iowa, against Michigan State, big plays, even against the Wisconsin team, big plays through the air. That's where they want to live with this passing attack. Red zone, they were not great against Iowa. Inside the 20, they settled for a number of field goals in that one. They've still scored 100% of the time in the red zone, still made 7 trips, but they only had 4 touchdowns there. They settled for 3 field goals, and they only had 2 red zone field goals coming into that game on the year, so that was very interesting to see them do that against that defense. They were struggling to find points, but big plays definitely helped them prevail. Offensive line, they've been tremendous. Maybe a small little smidge backwards, but not much. There was a fumble that Stroud had recovered for a touchdown against Iowa. He also had a pick 6 against Michigan State before that, and miscommunication with other wide receivers. So not many turnovers this year, but they've had a few of them. Certainly been costly. Jawan Jones, Paris Johnson, a phenomenal tackle duo. Luke Weipler is doing great things for them at center. Matthew Jones, a senior at guard. This has been an offensive line that, I think it's taken some big steps. Last year they were really great, of course. Really, it's just pretty identical of what they were doing last year. Looking at the Penn State offense, 33.5 points per game, a little north of 423 yards per contest as well. They only had 10 points on offense, 268 yards versus Michigan. Of course, they had a pick 6 in that contest. They added 7 more. There was only 2 big plays in that game for this offense. A long 60-yard run by Clifford to set up a touchdown. And then coming out of the gates of the second half, they had a 50-50 ball on a 3rd and long they caught, down the sideline, ended up settling for a field goal there. That was it. This offense was not great in that game. They were not very good in the first half against Minnesota either, and they started bouncing back. The passing attack led by Sean Clifford really started clicking there in that second half of that game. They were really able to pull away in the wideout. 295 yards, 4 touchdowns for Clifford, 74% comp rate in that game. Overall in the season, it's been, interesting season for Clifford. He's been around a long time. You already kind of know what his ceiling is. And 61% completion rate, 13 touchdowns, 3 picks. He can provide a good asset as a runner as well. He's got 141 and 4 touchdowns. Again, though, Clifford, the inaccuracies, the decision-making, it's kind of a bit of the same. Drew Aller, a 5-star recruit, he's waiting in the wings for his opportunity. Won't probably come this year. But Clifford, though, it's just been much of the same throughout his career. His ceiling's already kind of set. Being at home is obviously a big help. If this game was on the road, I would have no faith in Clifford. But being here at home, in front of his home crowd, it's going to be a big opportunity for him. This passing attack, though, they've really not had that many big plays. Parker Washington, a great slot weapon, helps underneath. He's dangerous in the open field. Mitchell Tinsley, coming over from Western Kentucky, he's got some nice hands. He can win on the outside. They both have 30 receptions and 28 respectively, 340-plus yards for the both of them. And then Brenton Strange, he's been a great tight end for them. He's got 245 yards and 4 touchdowns, a team high 14.1 yards per catch. Well, I guess it isn't a team high, but Harrison Wallace has just 7 less receptions, but he's been one of their leaders there. That trio for them. Keandre Lambert-Smith has not been very productive. Only set 9 grabs for him, but he's a big play wide receiver, so this is a guy they're going to have to unleash, I think, eventually. The running game, one thing I said about the Michigan games, they were going to get dominated in the trenches, and that's exactly what happened, especially against this running game. I mean, just the game script worked out perfect for Michigan. They were on the field so much. They were not able to really establish the run. A season-low 22 attempts, 111 yards, which was not a season-low. 98 against Purdue was. This duo of freshman running backs, though, I think for the most part have been pretty respectable. They had 175 rushing against Minnesota and 2 touchdowns as a team. Nicholas Singleton, 561 yards, 7 touchdowns, averaging almost 7 yards per touch, 396 and 4 scores for Katron Allen. These are very impressive running backs that they have. The offensive line, I think they've definitely played better than I expected this year. Again, they weren't great against Michigan, but for the most part, for what they have, guys like Sale Wormley, Caden Wallace, Lendon Treadwell, he's been playing well. Overall, it's a mixed bag. For the most part, it's a pretty youthful offensive line. I think they've actually been playing pretty well. They do face a tough Ohio State defensive front, though, in this one. Penn State's offense, though, I think, Mike Yurchich, he made some good adjustments in that second half against Minnesota. Overall, though, this is a unit that's it's led by a quarterback whose ceiling is capped. He is a veteran. It's been around a long time, so that's certainly encouraging. And they have talented guys at all positions. I like what they have a wide receiver, from a duo standpoint, and the same at running back. Still very young. Pass protection is going to be key. The big problem with young running backs is struggles in pass protection, so that's something to watch in this game. Overall, I think this offense has a good potential, but here against an Ohio State defense, they're going to have some good balance. They're going to have to control the clock. That's going to be their best way to beat a strong Buckeyes offense. Looking at the Ohio State defense, Jim Knowles coming over from Oklahoma State after a great 2021 season. And it's hard to gauge a good read on this defense because they've not really played anybody. They're allowing under 15 points per game, 239 yards per contest. That's really good. But the highest faced opponent in terms of total offense is Toledo, who's 65th. All the other opponents, Notre Dame's are like 77th, Wisconsin 72nd. They're very one-dimensional. And, of course, they just played Iowa, who ranks dead last. So they've not really played a tough offense yet. I think that this is by far probably the best offense they've played. But I still think they have a pretty good matchup here. They're 8th in FBS against the run. Of course, last year, the lack of toughness was a big thing for them, and they absolutely got gashed running the ball. Penn State, though, they threw it all over them last year. Sean Clifford in Columbus had a pretty good day, I'd say, throwing the ball. They were able to stay in that game for almost 4 quarters. Only giving up 2.8 yards per carry, a little under 91 yards per game on the ground. Just numbers that I think are pretty skewed with who they've played. But you've definitely noticed a difference from this front seven. Tommy Eichenberg, very impressed with his improvements this year as a run defender. He's made some good plays in coverage as well. Michael Hawley stepping up. I believe he has 7 tackles for loss. On the defensive line, Zach Harrison's coming off a big-time week. JT Tuimoloau for TFL. Same for Jack Sawyer. So they certainly getting some better production than they were a season ago. Hall, leads the team with 4.5 sacks from the interior. Javante Jean-Baptiste has 3. Still, it's tough to gauge a read on this defense with who they've played. This is a big opportunity, though, to kind of find some things out about them because this is a talented offense that has some skill. So in last year, they struggled big time against Michigan and Oregon, especially in the trenches. So I think Penn State can certainly look to bring it to them there. I'm not very thrilled with Penn State's effort in the trenches, especially when you saw the Michigan game. But this is an opportunity to find a lot out about this Ohio State defense because they've not been tested a whole lot this year. We look at the secondary group, though. Actually, let's focus on the linebackers. Cody Simon, he's 4th on the team in tackles. Again, I've been very thrilled with Tommy Eichenberg's improvements. He's already got 57 tackles on the year, through 7 games. He had 64 and 13 last year, so he's definitely making a lot more plays, especially against the run. Steel Chambers, guy that was a former running back converting over, and that was a big problem coming into the years. They had him and Chip Trainum, 2 former running backs converted to linebackers, so very iffy linebacking core. Look at the secondary. They've not faced a passing attack one bit. This is probably the best passing attack they're facing, and they're not really great. They don't make big plays downfield a whole lot. There are some talented pass catchers, though, that will certainly give us some good film to watch on these corners. Ronnie Hickman at safety, Lathan Ransom. I think that's a very good duo they have. Hickman, he's more of a box guy that can make plays sideline to sideline, but he's a veteran at this point. 23 tackles on the year for him with a pick. And, Denzel Burke, a very good corner. Tanner McAllister in the slot. Cam Brown's a redshirt senior. McAllister, of course, he follows Knowles over from Oklahoma State. He's been big time in, coaching these guys up in this new scheme. So for the most part, I think they've did a pretty good job of converting over to this scheme because, they have played, some notable opponents, and, you'd probably expect them to struggle. But I think that this Penn State game is going to give us some good film to watch, but I don't think we're going to see this defense potentially get exposed until the Michigan game. That's going to be their biggest test. They'll make or break their assessment, really, on what this defense has accomplished this year. McAllister, though, coming over with 3 picks already on the year. I've overall been happy with this Ohio State defense, but it was much the same last year where they were great for 10 straight games after the Week 2 loss to Oregon and then to the Michigan game. They were looking good for 10 straight weeks and then got absolutely blitzed by the Wolverines. So right now, a very sound unit's playing very good football, but we will not really find much things out about them until this game or maybe against the Wolverines once again. So for the top to bottom, good unit for Ohio State. Looking at the Nittany Lion defense, again, coming into that game against Michigan, I thought they were going to get, pretty beat up in the trenches, but I did not expect them to give up 418 yards of rushing to the Wolverines on the year, giving up 19 points per contest, 373 yards per game. It's very interesting with this defense because obviously they have P.J. Mustipher come back. Last year when he departed with injury, the run defense completely collapsed. Curtis Jacobs, him and Mustipher, the only 2 veterans that were coming back in this front 7. It was a very young unit. Chop Robinson's really stepped up at the defensive end spot. You look at some other guys, Tyler Eldson, a middle linebacker. They've had to lean on him a good bit. Abdul Carter, he's a freshman that's been big for this defense. But the last 2 weeks, they've not been good. I think they did a pretty good job against Minnesota, a team that ran a lot with Mohamed Ibrahim. Only 165 yards rushing. It's a pretty encouraging number. Good way to bounce back because that's a physical offensive line. They could have did the same thing. They could have ran for 400+, no doubt, and nobody would have been shocked because that's how good their running game is. But for Penn State, they really have to continue to be – they have to try and find more toughness against the run. Michigan, they were just running downhill with ease. At one point, I think Michigan had 30 plays. Penn State had 10 in that first half ran. It was just complete domination in the trenches on both sides. And Ohio State, they can certainly do that to you. They're coming off a big of a sluggish effort running the ball against Iowa. Penn State is not Iowa when it comes to their defense. I expected this unit to struggle in certain areas this season, especially in this front 7 with all the youth, and they certainly have. They're facing a big-time test here. Maybe the home crowd can help, rejuvenate this defense. You do look at the secondary, though. If they can slow down the run, this is going to be a very great matchup. This secondary, they are absolutely phenomenal NFL-type corners. You look at Joey Porter on one side. He had 6 pass breakups week 1 against Purdue, and he's been really good all year. Jair Brown at safety, he's their top tackler. He also had 5 picks last year, so he has some great ball skills. Kalen King, the other cornerback spot. I like Daquan Hardy as well. This is a great secondary top to bottom. One number that I talked about before that Michigan game I'm going to talk about again is, they're 3rd in FBS in opponent completion rate, but they're 125th in, attempts per game allowed. Teams are throwing 39 pass attempts per game. It's one of the highest marks in college football. They're only giving up a 51% completion rate. That's highly impressive. Very good secondary from the Nittany Lions. But again, long 4.1 yards per carry. If they can get better against the run and just magically just slow down this ground game of Ohio State, it's going to be a fun matchup in the secondary. They'll have no problems playing man coverage. They'll trust their guys. Those are going to be some great battles to watch. So I think Penn State, they're obviously facing a really good offensive line, a physical running game. It's going to be tough to slow them down, but if they can, and I hope they do because I'd love to see this matchup of these wide receivers versus this secondary all game long. Penn State's defense matches up pretty well in the back end, I would say, if they can slow down the running game. So that's going to be the matchup to watch. And, Manny Diaz knows it, so they're going to have to do a lot, send extra help, do whatever you can to slow down this running game. And, we'll have C.J. Stroud and his pass catchers beat your very talented secondary. It's a matchup they're going to take 10 times out of 10. If they can stop that running game, it's going to be fun to watch. So Penn State, that's the key for them, no doubt. Looking at team comparisons, straight across the board, Ohio State and everything. Again, the secondary is very elite of Penn State. I was harping on, I think that they're going to have the edge easily there. I'll give the edge at linebacker and defensive front to the Buckeyes. I would say very young unit for Penn State in their front 7. offensive line. The Buckeyes gets you guys there. It's just a phenomenal duo of tackles, and DeJuan Jones, Paris Johnson, wide receiver, pretty unanimous there. Same at running back. They have a very good freshman duo at Penn State that, in 1 or 2 years, it's going to be really good. Probably one of the nation's best duos, but right now, Mayan Williams, Travion Henderson, these guys have plenty of power in a very versatile backfield there. At quarterback, C.J. Stroud, by far, he's going to be a top pick in next year's draft, while Sean Clifford, his ceiling is pretty maxed out. Pretty easy team comparisons there. Final thoughts on the prediction, keys to the game. I think for Ohio State, limit the big plays on the ground. Don't get rattled by this road environment. Again, Penn State, they have some running backs in Allen and Singleton that could really dice things up. And considering how bad this run defense was last season ago in the big-time games, that's certainly another key to continue to focus on. Penn State must stop the run. Made it pretty clear when I was talking about their defense that it's a must. They gave up 400-plus yards to Michigan, completely got dominated in terms of time of possession. That was just a bad day all around for James Franklin's program, so they must stop the run. And it gives that secondary a chance to make plays. So I do think that they're going to love that matchup if they can slow down the run and then find some balance on offense. You might be able to stop them in the secondary, but you also want to keep them on the sideline because they're still going to do their thing. The prediction for me, though, is I do not see them stopping the run. I think Ohio State's going to have balance themselves. Penn State, I think they're going to put up some points. The jury's still out on this Buckeye defense, so we're starting to find things out. But I think they'll certainly score some points in the first half, and then I think another score or two in garbage time. 44-24 for me. Ohio State, I think they'll run away with this one. But I wouldn't be shocked if this is close one bit. I wouldn't even be shocked if Penn State won the game if they can slow down the run. So I do love that secondary. I think this is certainly be a lot closer than I'm saying. I picked them to lose to Michigan by 25 points, and they lost exactly by 25 points in that one. So I do think I have a pretty good read on this Penn State football team. And I think that's going to be the score in this one. It should be a fun one. Very excited to see how these receivers do against this secondary. Big-time opportunity to learn a lot about the Buckeye defense as well. So that's going to be it for today's episode, guys. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.